All right. Hello, world. Welcome to another episode of dWeb Chats. I believe we're on number 8 here. This is a very exciting episode. I also really mess this up every time, so I'm going to go ahead and say it. It's a great time for you to like and subscribe to the video and keep up with the future dWeb Chats. All right. So today we are hanging out with Mike Michelini. If you know Handshake, if you've seen any of my previous episodes, you already know Mike, but we'll do a brief introduction. Mike is Handshake's number one top culture cultivator, influencer, educator. I always call him in my head. He's always our Andre. You know, Bitcoin has Andre Antonopoulos, and we have Mike Michelini. So I'm super grateful
Wow.
that he is taking the time to hang out with us today. Welcome to the show, Mike. And how are you doing, man?
Thanks for having me, Alex. It's great, man. That's a great little intro. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm happy to be on and have some fun today, like we were just saying. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, we're gonna have a complete free form chat, just some handshake nerds nerding out on handshake. But with that, I think it's good to set a little bit of context. I think Mike got into handshake a couple weeks or months before I did, and he was a big reason as to why I was able to conceptualize, like understand what this was all about. So he helped host, I think, all three Handycons. We're on three of them at this point. He helped put those together when Handshake was just a little abstract thing. We were all kind of stuck in our homes with not too much to do, and I think he was definitely learning along the way, but putting up videos and trying to make it as user friendly as possible, which leads to the very first question, because I don't think, as you stated in your videos, you're not like a developer by trade. You're not doing a bunch of code in the background. How did Mike get introduced to Handshake, and what was your aha moment? How did it click for you?
Okay, sure. Um, so as far as my technical background, my dad always wanted me to be an engineer. I remember he's an engineer, civil engineer, not a computer engineer. But of course, the cool thing is to be a computer engineer. I did shake it for a year or two at college. I went to Stevens Tech in Hoboken, New Jersey, and but I switched to the easy way out, engineering management. Was the degree I got. And, my technical programming friends, similar to guys and girls in Handshake, were like those kind of crews, like, oh, you took the easy way out. But it was more like, actually, I would say it's like e-commerce or e-business. I think they even rebranded the degree to e-business at Stevens. So I always try to say I bridge tech and business. That's kind of what I think. I even took an internship in a .com, and I realized I found my way as like the bridge. I like to kind of connect the business and the tech. So with that in mind, I found out about Handshake. I'm an e-commerce seller. I have in other parts of my office here, I have my e-commerce world. These are some of my samples of products I sell, like a lot of kitchen and bar supplies, but also some other brands of products. And so of course I have normal domains, websites, storefronts. And of course, so I understand. I mean, most people understand the value of a domain, but I've also been through a lot as e-commerce seller. Also, I lived in China, where I was there when Facebook worked. I was there when Google worked. I was there when they blocked it in summer 2008. I remember almost to the day. I think it was like August 2008 when most of the Western social media was blocked. Twitter got blocked, Facebook got blocked. It was working before that. I remember I signed up for Twitter without a VPN in China. It was just like worked. So, I've seen that front. I've also seen the side of, sellers getting banned on Amazon. I've seen, all kinds of different types of censorship, whether it's good or bad. We can all, I guess, in life, right? We can all justify or argue one way or the other of those reasons why those different events happened. But, I'm more of a, I believe in the individual over the group. I'm an individual thinker. I think probably like most true OG kind of crypto people. I'm not in it just to like buy some meme coin and flip stuff. I'm in it for the fundamental meaning. So of course I was hearing about blockchain domains. I can't say I really dug into it, but my buddy Chris I've mentioned him, I think, in some of my other content. Chris Moore, he's another American in Hong Kong, and he calls me up during COVID when we're all locked down. He's like, "Hey, Mike, there's this cool new domain thing because we're all looking for things. We're selling PPE masks, right? During the
Mhm.
2020, we were all doing Amazon different kind of things, and he's like, "Oh, I found this really cool project called Handshake," and we're talking on like a WeChat call or some voice call, and I'm like, I remember saying like, "Oh, I don't want more domains. I actually have like 300 or so normal Web 2 domains, mostly hosted, some not, but mostly I try to use them." And I was like, I don't want to pay for more domain names, man. Like he's like, no, they're different. Like you have the TLD, and I didn't even get that. And he was kind of explaining. I think we had 2 or 3 calls. He was in it before me, and he gifted me not directly Skyinclude, which is like you said, my YouTube channel, but he says, okay, Mike, just try it out. It's better than the other ones. I've researched the other ones. I guess at that time it was like ENS Unstoppable.
Mhm.
This one's I think is the best. I know what you like. I know because we're kind of similar mindset about decentralization and freedom of speech. So he gave me a list of like 10 or 15 TLDs he had on Namebase. I forget it was like a screenshot or an Excel list. He's like, just pick any one, I'll just send it to you for free. And I looked through the list and I saw Skyinclude, and there was a few others, like 2 words. There was some, it was an okay list. And I went to like the .coms and I saw skyinclude.com available. So I said, okay, I'm going to build on this. I don't want to just be some squatter flipper person. So I picked Skyinclude. I think I first bought the .com, and then I told Chris, send me Skyinclude on Namebase. And then, and I said, I'm going to build on this, and I'm going to because the idea of the name was, keep you included in the sky. That was why I picked it. And, there was also a lot of Skynet stuff. The Sky, I think he had a few other Sky ones. And,
Mhm.
so I picked the name, and then I almost immediately started to just document like how I was building on it. And that's somewhat, and I was almost adamant to not buy more names, or I was like, I just want to have one. I don't want to be like this person that just gets consumed by like buying the new names and flipping names. But of course, I've kind of gotten into it, as you could see. I don't know if you know my whole portfolio, but of course, I built up a portfolio, and my names are mostly around what I do in my normal 9 to 5, or my main business is e-commerce, cross-border trade, China. I have some Chinese words too. And so I was kind of picking up stuff that I could see I would use. And that's my quick story, or a little bit longer story.
Yeah. Well,
Or
no,
you
you
could
touched
dig into that. I could clarify or dig into
Yeah,
certain
you
parts of it.
you touched on a lot of things that we can definitely have a fun time. I think a good time digging into there. The first thing I think that you had mentioned was that you had like a mild domain background. So which was interesting. Like I did not. I came a little bit from the crypto angle, but it was so light. So Handshake was this whole new world that kind of bridged the two for me, and it sounds like in a sense for you. The 2008 thing is a big deal. My brother went to study abroad for law school in China in 2008, and I was young. I was in high school, and I remember him coming back and talking about the firewall and being like, yeah, if you try to go to certain websites, right, there'll be like this, like essentially like a Chinese police officer like waving, like you can't do that. And it's a terrible way to think of it, but I remember at the time I was like, oh, that's kind of like funny, like novelty, like it's such a different world. Um, but then you start to I would travel to like South America and stuff, and there would be some major differences in currency and in the way that people related to the internet, and I started picking up on that. And then when I studied abroad in China, I remember how prevalent the use of VPN. At this point, it was it wasn't new. It wasn't news that people weren't able to access Google and Facebook and Twitter. It was very common knowledge, and I remember my colleagues the students I would study with, the Chinese students were dealing out VPN codes and like usernames. Like it was just like that was the thing that they would do in the hallway so that they could all stay connected beyond WeChat, which is incredible for the record. Like China has really great social media infrastructure already built inside, but it's not global, which kind of defeats the purpose of some aspects of the internet. The fact that you got to see that firsthand, I think, is seems to be pretty impactful on you when it comes to relating to Handshake. And it was impactful on me because I'm terrible in the classroom. I really am. But when it comes to experiences, I pick up on things like that because I think you and I, not to lump myself with you, but I think that you and I are maybe not technical developers, but we are somewhat of social developers, right? Like we like to blend
Yeah.
with people and say, hey, oh, do you know about this? I can relate to this, and we're not so scared about the social interaction. Maybe we thrive on it, if you will, sometimes, and it gives me energy to help people connect and see the enthusiasm, and I think that maybe that's what drives you a lot.
Yeah.
Those things make a lot of sense. The e-commerce as well, having and you really did kind of rabbit hole it. And I do know definitely you're trying to keep people included in the sky. Um, what what have you? I guess before we move on to like some of the questions I have for us, what did that experience feel like starting to document it because you were doing it for yourself, and then people kind of, I think, probably expected you to document it, and then it probably led you to meet a bunch of people that you didn't plan to meet, right? Because I think that some people hop on YouTube for the first time and they're like, oh, this is the founder of Handshake, right? Like, what has that been, being one of the most prominent faces in Handshake? What have you learned from it? What are some things that maybe people don't know that Mike Michelini has to maybe, or gets to, or has to deal with being the first doing all the things you do?
Sure. I do have experience like blogging and podcasting. Actually I switched to speaker thing for different shows. Like, so I have a podcast I've been doing since 2013 called Global from Asia, about cross-border e-commerce and Amazon, and that led me to get onto like Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal and other ones about trade wars and COVID and things like that. So I have a little bit of experience. I love building like authority sites. So I kind of had the feeling that would happen with Skyinclude. Also Chris was saying, oh, if this builds up and Handshake also is successful, like this will become like an authority. So I mean, it's not like I didn't have that in the back of my mind when I started. I mean, I am a content marketer, and I did think that is how I could help contribute into the space rather than building stuff as a developer. Like, I wish I could build content and awareness. But of course, especially in the bull market, especially in like 2021, because I started, I think maybe 2020 is when I got in, not at mainnet, but like Q3, Q4. But like around the peak, I think the peak of the bull was like 2021, like spring, summer, fall, like that kind of middle 2021 was, everybody's going crazy about crypto in general. Everything was like going through the moon, going to moon, etc. So of course I was getting some comments of people that are like, coin investors, or not so, a lot of people not technical. Like, that's what I think the Handshake community doesn't understand. I think they all think that the world is technical and can understand differences of like UD and a handshake, the technical part, they think, but most people don't understand. And most people, they don't want to understand. No, they don't. No, they don't want to understand. They don't want to invest the time to understand. They just want the quick hit, the quick answer. I've learned that most people, and I've even heard this recently, even in other domain communities, crypto communities, people don't really care about decentralization. It's until maybe it happens to them or somebody in their life, but I don't know. I feel like people don't really understand or care. Even within the Handshake community itself, there's these different groups of people that just want to get like a centralized resolver to work on Brave. And there's other people, maybe you'd even know some of those people on either side, but the other people that, no, I don't want to just get Brave integration with a centralized resolver. If I want to get Brave integration, I want to get the Dane and SSL security. Even within the Handshake community, there's those two kind of camps of true decentralization versus just kind of patching it to make it work in the centralized systems. So, I've been learning that a lot. And of course, yeah, like I've been able to connect with so many people. I've been able to talk to every founder except Joseph Poon. So I talked to both Andrew Lees and JJ. I'm sure if I tried to reach out to Joseph, I could probably try to get through. It's not like I made too much effort, but I've been able to talk to all three of them in different ways, which is pretty cool. We've gotten, I know we both talked to Tieshun and Jahan and, all these different people in the ecosystem, from entrepreneur to investor to founders, which has been really, really cool. And then also in the domain community, right? Like we kind of like, you were right, a names con, but Handshake is a domain kind of blockchain. So a lot of people, I never thought, I've heard of Michael Seiger before. I was in Handshake, but I got to kind of know got to talk to him and invite him into Handycon and chat to him a bit sometimes and DMs, etc., is because of Handshake, right? I think if I was just to approach him as a normal domain investor or normal, business person, it might not have been as effective. So it's been kind of cool to kind of use this element of this, crazy moon shot, like high risk, experiment called Handshake and be able to kind of get into the domain ecosystem like Sara and at NamesCon I've gotten to know really well, and I almost I consider a friend at this point. We've helped each other both with NamesCon and HandyCon and auctions and things. So it's been a really cool way to just build relationships in Handshake as well as a greater domain community.
Yeah, it touches so many different areas between the crypto world and the domain world, and then all the personalities inside of it. You also have a lot of people that maybe aren't full. You have a lot of people in Handshake that are absolutely about decentralization, that has its pros and that has its cons. It's one of the foundational aspects of Handshake and one of the reasons that I'm here. But also, the way you spoke reminds me like that world, the decentralized obsessed world has made me rethink the way I think, rethink things so many times over and over. They're like, no, that isn't, sometimes I'm like, oh, I get this. And then I'm like, oh no, I don't. Not, there's somebody who the priorities of decentralization there's a whole spectrum of it, right? Some people just want it to work and some people truly want it, 100%. Some people want it in ways that you haven't even thought about. So there is that, and then it does fuse a lot of different personalities, together. A lot of different like motivations, I guess, for being in the space. There's tons of people that like Handshake every once in a while. They come around because they're like, this is a novelty, but they're not 100% in. Those are the ones that actually really motivate me, because I'm like, the fact that they're paying attention at all is a good sign. But and then you have people that are 100% about it, and then you have people who are like, this thing is super cool. Why isn't it more commercial? Why isn't it more commercial now? It should be more commercial today, right? And that and I understand who they are, where they're coming from, particularly as more of a business background person. I definitely thought that very early on, and still do in some capacities. But I also know that maybe when that threshold hits, it'll probably be going in a very commercial direction very quickly. So I'm enjoying our quiet time, as I put it. But okay, before I deviate too far from on topic, so it has you have really brought a lot of people together, sometimes through Handycon, sometimes through the Flamingo Handshake auctions, which I was lucky enough to go to your very first one. I don't get to go to everyone, but I have gone to a lot of them. We've auctioned off a couple rugs at them. I've sold names at Flamingo, and I've now bought names at Flamingo, which I hadn't really messed with in the past. But I was like, you know what? Let's, I'll take an emoji. So that's been really cool. The auctions have been cool. You have a team that you've rallied together. You have the YouTube channel. You have the one Handycon event, and I think it's fair to say that you connect a lot of the ecosystem together. I have not ever spoken to JJ. I did get to meet Joseph at Consensus 2022, which was
nice,
mind-boggling. Really really nice guy. And I've also got to meet Steven and some stuff. So the community is super diverse. Everybody kind of has their reason for being here, I guess, is what I'm getting at. And that's been really really fun. I don't know. It's I think it'll, like, as everybody kind of keeps evolving in their own specialties, they keep bringing new things, and you keep bringing them together every year for Handycon, which is super fun. I'm gonna get into, if do you have anything to say on that, or before I switch into a couple questions that we have here?
I think we covered it. Okay. I'm ready for your questions.
Cool. So one thing that I remember was really
Should I wear my glasses? Somebody says, should I wear my?
Oh, you should. You should if you have them. I don't have.
Let me go get them.
Yeah, definitely bring them up.
I think that we talked about it. Yeah, absolutely.
So while Mike's off camera, he's going to get the Flamingo Handshake glasses, which I have a pair. My dad has a pair. If you see my Twitter, then you see a picture of my dad rocking a pair of them. These glasses they bring a whole vibe.
I'm getting a few things. Maybe this is somewhat relevant, but like, of course, the glasses, and yes. I saw your dad wearing them, but in this one, it was actually a neighbor in China had a bunch of stuffed animals and said I could pick anyone I wanted. So of course I picked this. My daughter and my kids know I love so my daughter painted this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
like it's
you
a real she.
NFT, you minted that one, didn't you? Is that the
Yeah,
one
yeah,
you
we created it into a
created?
stargaze. It's honestly I still have to learn how to, but I don't really have it for sale, but people can make off. But I made a little collection with all their all their paintings.
Beautiful.
And then this is my kids. I kind of keep a little board of the stuff my kids give me.
Yeah.
And you can see flamingo, like flamingo, like both of them. They know I like, flamingo. It's like
Uh,
everywhere.
you
Yeah.
inspired a pair of I got a pair of flamingo board shorts. They're bright and very pink, and they were. I was definitely when I was in the store, I was like, oh,
Yeah, no,
well,
I
I
guess we
have
can talk
to.
about the story. It's just random, man. I mean,
Yeah.
basically, I think it's worth bringing up the name of Flamingo Handshake. The name came, I randomly, I don't think, I hope I always worry if I upset somebody that opened an auction and I won the auction. You know what I mean? But I won the auction that didn't open it, the flamingo and then the handshake emoji.
Yeah.
And it's not like I got that with this on Minds, but of course it just looked kind of like I always called it Flamingo and Handshake because that's what it is. But what happened was Yat came out with their auctions. They launched Yat in April 2021,
Hmm.
and people were just sharing it all over the place. And we liked emoji domains then, and I was like, this is, I remember talking to Johnny Woo and some other people on a call. Maybe it was Mark Smith. And I was like, man, that makes me so angry because we could do that ourselves. We could do an auction of domains of emojis. We don't need, why do they got to make another protocol and et cetera, et cetera? There's Handshake has emojis, and that's one cool thing about it. So I don't know, maybe it was Johnny or something, but I was like, let's make an auction that's about emojis and that's fun. And then I was like trying to think of a name. And then I looked through, of course, I looked through my list and I was like, Flamingo Handshake. I was like, that's a pretty cool one. So it was really, really last minute. I mean, everything was so hyped in, but I think within 1 or 2 weeks of notice, we put together, if you were there, and, we had a really successful auction, but it was almost just kind of, I wasn't really trying to troll or upset Yat, but I was like, we can do this ourselves. We don't need them to do an auction of their like own created names that they're just selling arbitrarily to people to, so yeah, that's kind of the quick story of the name and how it's somewhat started.
Yeah, that is a fun story, and sorry, but it reminds me. I was just hanging out on Namebase one day and saw NFTs are stupid, and I was like, for Teddy Handshake, and I was like, that made me laugh. Like I don't laugh. I watch stand-up
Oh,
comedy, I don't laugh, and I read this, I was like, that's
oh,
funny.
that's just
And so I
that's
picked it
funny.
up, and then I did the same thing. I went and looked at my portfolio. I'm like, well, I want to start a brand. I want it to be independent of MIGs, and I was like, I want something to grab people's attention. And I was very annoyed because I kept trying to explain NFTs to people, and they just wouldn't. All they would do is try to rebuttal me on why NFTs didn't make sense, why domain names didn't make sense. And I was like, you know what? Here you go. NFTs are stupid. There you go. Now are you paying attention? Right. So it was also like
Yeah,
a
that's
it's also like a troll on some folks. But I think
and the
that's
dog, man. Who's the dog?
oh,
I
that's
love their
Squeaky. Yeah,
dogs.
Squeaky's hanging out. She got a haircut. We've been walking a lot, so I think she's tired out. We'll see. She usually abandons me
Cool.
halfway through the video. We'll see when she
It
picks her
almost
moment.
doesn't look like real, It looks like she's like a part of the furniture.
Right?
It's awesome.
She's definitely real. She behaves herself for you guys, thankfully. But so Flamingo Handshake, you were on auction. Next auction will be number 24. I don't think we have a date, but people have to go check them out. They're live. It's also a good chance to get some names that you probably wouldn't be able to see otherwise. Um,
Yeah.
and and it started with emojis, but we branched out a little bit. We even have some SLDs, TLDs, names, non-names, and I think in the future we're going to see some really. I think that's going to be the showcase place for some very unique names. So we got to and shout out to Anne for always helping out.
Anne's great. Yeah, Anne's
Scripted,
awesome.
everybody who's Chango's been on there before. Everybody who's helped out with Flamingo. It's definitely something that I try to book time. I try to cut my work days short when they're available.
Awesome. Thanks,
Um,
buddy.
yeah. Okay. So thinking back to 2001, kind of that Q3 2001 2002, something that helped me. I always obviously focused on Handshake most. the
2021, right? 21.
2021. Sorry. Yes. And
Just confirming.
what always something that made me really at the time, I there was a lot of talk about a whole dWeb stack. There was a lot of talk about Handshake, right, as being the domain, and then we had a lot of talk about Akash and
Yeah.
dVPN and like how this was going.
Yeah.
And then there was like Arwe, and there was Skynet. And it was like this was all going to be a decentralized world, right? And that has settled, I guess is the best way to put it. But but I think it's still happening kind of like in its own direction, but less as a stack today. I think some people like it's almost like splintered off, right? You're like
Yeah.
a still doing its thing, Handshake's doing its thing. You were at the center, you know, a lot of the early conversations were about that. The way you're nodding tells me that you've also seen kind of the conversation dissipate from the stack, but like those things are still happening. What are your thoughts? Do you think that that was just like a fairy tale of the time? Do you think there'll be like a reconvening in the future? What are your thoughts about the whole kind of having a whole decentralized stack and all of that?
I mean, it's kind of strange, not strange, but like, you know, I know you're also active in the Cosmos ecosystem. I mean, I guess maybe it's Akash that led us there, or Steve Mackey in a way, I think kind of led me there through the narrative. Sentinel moved there from Ethereum, I remember, because they used to be Sentinel dVPN used to be on Ethereum, moved to Cosmos, I think based on Akash. But just like, you know, you think about the current Web 2 stack or the normal stack, what are the things you need, right? A domain and you need hosting, and they're kind of two separate things. But when like Osmosis is one of, you know, biggest dexes in Cosmos, and I think they're hosted on Akash. I think a few other dexes are on Akash, but they're using Web 2 domain names. And but yeah, it has kind of quieted down. I think I don't even know what happened to Saya. Is it totally gone? I mean, I don't know. Like, I think I think that, you know, I think it was also just because generally we're in this bear market. And to me, I don't want to be like, how do I say? You know, I interviewed Akash, Greg Osuri on the Skyinclude, and he called it the backup centers or disaster recovery. I don't know if you know that in corporate world, DR. You know, like I worked in Wall Street for a little bit, and we had to go to DR centers like in New Jersey from New York City and learn how to like operate in case New York collapsed, or we had to go to New Jersey to do our work. And they just had a whole setup of a whole office there that was empty, just waiting in case there was a disaster event in New York and we had to go to New Jersey to work. That's what, at least I understand, a disaster recovery as. And he says that's kind of where we are. That was actually a couple of years ago when I did that, but he says basically Web3 or dWeb is basically a disaster recovery. Like I mentioned earlier with Skyinclude, when I got Skyinclude TLD on Handshake gifted to me, I got the .com, and I keep both. It's actually double work. It's not mirrored. It's literally, we have two websites. We have the Skyinclude TLD, and then we have Skyinclude.com. But whenever we make a new post or content, we deploy on both. Wow. And of course, it's extra work because it's basically two completely separate websites. But basically what he was saying in the talk was we're at disaster recovery right now. Like, so if ever, I say this sometimes on my YouTube channel, I say like, in case this video is deleted, you know, go to the Skyinclude TLD and we'll link. I'm not really using the decentralized YouTube ones. I'm even forgetting the names of them. There's one or two YouTube alternatives on a decentralized system. I should be putting these on there too, and then even having that on the Skyinclude TLD site. And the Web 2 is completely Web 2, and the Web 3 is completely, or dWeb is completely dWeb. But it just seems like we've kind of lost momentum. I think I've seen less censorship. Honestly, I don't want to be like a bear, you know, somebody looking for the bad news, but I think just like Bitcoin goes up when the dollar inflates, I think the dWeb goes up when there's censorship. Yeah. And I was kind of waiting for it to happen when it started like regulating all these exchanges. I was expecting them to be taken offline. I'm waiting for the day. I don't want to be like a looking forward to it, but imagine osmosis.zone was taken offline. You know, like how can they really operate in the US on a decentralized exchange with US traffic and not be like taken down by the US authorities. They're illegally operating as far as I understand. Other DEXs, they ban US IP and it says you need a VPN, but Osmosis works on a US IP. Are they not afraid that that domain is going to get taken offline? And then there was also the story of Spheron. GoDaddy took their domain from them. I don't know if it was because of what they did or it was just a customer service mistake. Don't you remember that? That was like a year or so ago. Spheron, I believe, like maybe even ask Ann knows this better than me because she was talking to them, but they got their domain taken offline. So I think like Osmosis will need it. Maybe they'll need this when DEXs are so illegal or need so much licensing that their domain will get taken away because the government will say you can't have this domain, and we tell the GoDaddy or the Namecheap or whoever this domain's got to be taken offline for violating the US law. You know, I kind of am surprised these decentralized exchanges can still operate on Web 2 domains. Honestly, I'm waiting for the day when the government takes them offline. Just like I've been through this, of course, more on the China side, but I've even seen this on the US side. I've seen domains getting taken down by US authorities. I'm just waiting for more of that to happen for DeFi. When that happens on DeFi, for sure they're going to figure out how to use a Handshake domain. For sure they're going to tell all their millions or thousands or hundreds of thousands of users how to use a Handshake domain.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And what's the alternative? UDENS.eth? I mean, I guess maybe you could do it on .eth, but I think that's more like but I'm saying the dWeb will rise when this crackdown increases, you know? That's the story. And
Yeah.
the narrative will pick up when there's censorship, which has got to happen. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. I can't see it where it's going to always work on Web 2, DeFi and all this stuff.
And I don't think you're alone there, right? The Shake has a front end kind of page dedicated to dexes already, right? Like a lot of us can see that that will be happening sooner or later. The question is, do the dexes know on their own? I know, for example, Osmosis definitely knows what Handshake is, right? And that is I don't think that they would have a hard time, but other dexes will, there will be a day of reckoning, and it will be overnight. And I don't run a dex, I don't pretend to be in the industry, but I do imagine that if you're offline for too long, your users will find alternatives pretty quickly, right? Like, and so
Yeah.
you do need to be there. And what? Go ahead.
And the other risk is there's been those what's it called? Human they crack the Namecheap's customer support, or they crack the GoDaddy support to change the name server or change the IP or change something. It's not even about the tech. It's just they were able to not human hack into the customer support to change and then people connect their DeFi wallet and get hacked on the exact matching. It's not like a lookalike domain. It is the domain, but they were able to change it. And I've seen that happen. I can't remember which DEXs or Web3 services, but I've seen that happen. Luckily, it hasn't happened to me, but it's horrible. Imagine you go to the same domain that you normally use and it looks like the same site, but it's not.
Every time my wallet says, "Do you want to connect to this?" I'm just like, it seems too easy. Like I really wish I knew. They're like, "Oh, here's your airdrop. Just connect your wallet." I'm like, why do I have to do this?
Well, like, yeah, even I don't know. I think both of those, but you can kind of read what it's doing in the stuff or what it's trying to access, but it's still scary. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But before I lose myself, you mentioned somebody, Greg Azuri. I hope I'm saying it right. Whenever I get a chance to hear him speak, it's always, you can tell when you're hearing somebody who's speaking from experience, right? And he seems to have a wealth of it. I think his analogy right there is great. It's a disaster right now. The dWeb will be there when things don't work. That's its moment of reckoning. That will be its buzzer beater moment, is when something breaks and you don't know what to do and you have to scramble, and that's when the dWeb will shine. And if you want an analogy for that, we could talk COVID and Zoom. Zoom was a nice little toy, right? It was like a fun thing we could use to make a meeting, but you could just FaceTime or I'll see you in the office until infrastructure was absolutely obliterated, and you were like, well, we need to get to business, right? And we need to do it sustainably. What technology can we leverage? And in comes Zoom, right? And millions of other things, Slack and all these other tools, right? And but it is through these moments of scrambling and improvisation, right? When things are not working as expected or as intended, that new technologies emerge. And I think that Akash is doing a really, really well, like an amazing job of positioning themselves for those moments, considering GPU shortages and things like that. And I think Handshake will definitely have its moment, because sometimes, I think these technologies, they go dormant, it goes quiet. I feel like I'm the only nerd on the internet looking them up on a Tuesday afternoon. But then I have to realize the market is global, right? It just takes something to happen in one area of the world, right, for someone to need it, and then all of a sudden that'll create more enthusiasm and kind of a wake up call. But I think yeah, the bear market, as you mentioned, is a big contributor. It's not everybody's raw about decentralized storage right now, and YouTube works pretty
I mean,
great, and
everybody's down like 90% or more, so it's kind of
yeah,
painful.
people gotta get to work. I work in I work in finance, and I'm like, yeah, what's going on there? I can't, COVID was a different time. There was excess of liquidity and excess of time, right? It was very unique and unique time to get involved. And people are recovering from all sorts of things. So that was a good question about the stack. I want to have some total fun now before we even get involved. Non-financial advice, no finance, funny money. Let's pretend the dollars aren't real. I want to speculate. I like to do this on my own, but it's like I feel like I'm having conversations with myself on a walk with Squeaky. But speculation within Handshake, which is what we know the most. What do we think? Before we get into not so much numbers, do you think that TLDs, which is what Handshake is all about, and what I love, what you love, do you think that TLDs
I see it.
or she's just getting comfortable, or
That's
SLD
cool. That's cool.
are the future of Handshake? Is it really going to be everybody has their own TLD and they think they're as cool as we do, right? Because I think it's the most badass thing on the internet. Or is it going to be that, Play from .c just runs the show? Or, 2 or 3 TLDs run the show and everybody flocks there like they do with the Web 2 world? Or do we really think the TLDs are going to be adopted the way that we care about, the way that the founders of Handshake wanted to reserve TLDs for a bunch of people care about? Like, what are your thoughts now that we're a couple of years into the whole game?
I mean, I don't think my perspective has changed even over these last few years. I even have a fun little video I made on Skyinclude around December 2020. I remember talking about what I see the future as, and so like one of my TLDs is bartender. I think I've .bartender. And I see TLDs as communities. And we're just stuck on .com because that's just what it was. That was just the first one, or the main, there was not .com, net, org, I think. I'm not a really big domain expert, but I think those were like the 3 main ones. And those just were, that's just because what somebody arbitrarily picked, and .com just became, they even called it a .com bubble and the boom and etc. It's like com just became what people were used to typing. That's why people buy .com, because the human brain is triggered to put .com at the end of the word, and that's what it was, right? But of course, there's tons of, well, I don't even know what they call, like CCTLDs or whatever, like alternate TLDs, within ICANN now, right? And some have failed, some have like kind of given up or sold or whatever. And I think that's just because it did a bad job at marketing it to a community. I also was a startup weekend facilitator in China for like 3 years, 4 years. I went to Seattle to meet the headquarters, and they had one of their biggest sponsors was .co. And .co gave free .co's to every single startup at that weekend. And it was almost like, as a facilitator, it was like my kind of job, or one of my KPIs is how many startups got .co's this weekend. They wanted them to get them for free. Of course, it was just the first year. 500 startups, you might know 500.co. Like Dave McLaurin, those guys, like they had 500.co. So .co really targeted the startup entrepreneur community. Drop the, who needs that's what their whole angle, that's who their target user of .co was. And I think that's why I think that's how they found their niche. I don't really know the case study of .co, but that's what they did. And I was part of that because they sponsored heavily the corporate headquarters of Startup Weekend. And as a facilitator organizer, I had part of my requirement, even though I didn't work for them, I was like a volunteer, and I wasn't compensated more than maybe travel and hotel, but I requirement was on that list, make sure everybody gets a .co. Like we would tell the organizers, the team leaders, get that .co, get that .co. When you go in your presentation, .co is your website, build it on .co. So that's what their strategy was. And I believe it was an effective one. I even talked to somebody from .co when I was at Startup Weekend as a facilitator, and they're all excited, oh, help us get it into China, etc. So what I'm saying is, even if you look on Twitter, people want to get a .eth because they love ENS and they believe it's going to be, or they, not ENS, they love Ethereum, right? And Vitalik, and they're getting it because of that. I think it's a community. Like back to the bartender, I've been holding back, I didn't stake it or anything because I don't really think bartenders are going to go to Namecheap and register them, so I'm waiting for that time when it would be used as like a normal bartender can get their tips. So I don't want to be like sexist, but you imagine this beautiful bartender behind the bar in Austin at NamesCon, and she's hustling, popping open those beer bottles and giving them to customers, and she's grabbing the $5 bill and sticking it in her, her bra or her pants, like those kind of hot bartenders are like sticking cash around. You can imagine, just say like send it to like Sophie.bartender, right? Like that's the use case of the .bartender domains. Like I work, I'm a bartender, tip me, like maybe she can even have a YouTube video or a streaming video where she's saying, hit me up at Sophie.bartender. So I don't think people are just gonna have one identity. Maybe she'll have also her other SLD on a TLD, but she's gonna be like a member of the community, right? She's not gonna probably have her own TLD. This hot bartender or male or female hot bartenders getting tips. They're gonna like that's their domain, or that's their identity when they're bartending or in their bartending niche or experience as a community member of a bartender club. Right. And so, but she's not going to only have that one. She might be also a chess player, which wouldn't make sense exactly. But, and then she joins a chess club, and the chess club, of course, you could have your wallet address or your, whatever. But instead of email address, now it's your username in that chess club. Right. So the way I see it is the TLD is the community. And I think that's why the founders reserved those TLDs or those names for those, because those Alexa 100K and those top users, it's not just about collisions of domains, it's collisions with communities, top communities. That's what I see. And I see a future where there's, of course, the domain name itself, but there's the user DIDs. Everybody's so excited about decentralized IDs. But I can see a world where they're both used in tandem, right? Like my MySpace profile, my Facebook profile is my domain in that community. So Sophie.bartender, maybe she's not going to waste her time because she's like hot and she's making cash on tips, but maybe it could somehow be like a somewhat of an OnlyFans profile page where it's streaming her top tippers, her top or photos, or maybe if you tip enough, and she's bartending tonight at Austin at this club, you tip $50 or more, you can log in on your phone to her profile and see like hot photos of her, only for top supporters. Like I see it just being one and the same. The website is not just some like WordPress, GoDaddy, Bluehost thing. It's your private and public and private key for your members and the public. That's how I see this future.
So, okay. So in layers, the one thing that I think we have to remember, and NamesCon was a good reminder for me of this, is that TLDs have been around. You had to have a lot of money and a lot of, you had to care, but companies did go get their TLDs. What they didn't have even the option of doing was to make it so community driven at the time. And that's what Handshake is super unique, because you can have a decentralized SLD, you can have a real a much closer association to your TLD community as just an SLD holder than you could before. But I have to recognize that, a lot of people, a lot of big brands could own their TLD. Some do, and they, as far as I'm concerned, failed. Right? Like that, nobody thinks about Google with their TLD. They think about Google.com. Period. Right? And Google has an infinite marketing budget, and they still didn't pull it off in any super special way. But they didn't have the tech that a TLD does on Handshake. Right?
Exactly. It's Web 2 is boring, man. Come on.
Yeah.
It's so boring. What can I do with what can I do with a normal domain name? It's boring, man. It's truly boring. I guess I've been doing it for like 20 years. I've made my first website. Actually, I can even say 1999. I hosted my first web, michaelmichelini.com. You can Wayback Machine if you don't believe me listening. I figured out how to make a website in 1999. I was even visiting nonprofits in college to set up their websites. Everybody wanted a website in 1999. It's boring now. It's so boring now.
Yeah.
Email and a hosted website for my blog or my store. That's it. Yeah. It's so boring. There's no innovation. ICANN's just collecting that cash. VeriSign just reported record earnings of their domains of .com. It's so boring. It's so mature. It's so saturated. That's what Handshake, or maybe we can even say greater blockchain domains or decentralized domains, or whatever you want, Web3, whatever you want to call it, is supposed to be innovating. Why hasn't ICANN or the current system done anything like this? It's so boring. It's the same as it's been 20 years ago. There's no change.
They haven't been threatened. But with that, so we agree, right? The technology could disrupt. It's like if we use that as a case study, it's a whole new case study. Sure, we want to appeal to history. History is good, valuable for learning information, but with the TLD on Handshake, you can do so many new things when you build a community. Which, if I'm, .com, does it stand for community or communication? I don't know, but you can build.
I think company or something like network, and then org is like non-profit or organization, I guess. But yeah, it's meant to be like commercial. I think maybe commercial, maybe.
That might be it. So many codes. I don't know. But with that, so a TLD can be very different. An SLD can be much more active. It can generate much more like active participation by the holders, right? And maybe like influence. You can set up DAOs. You can do all sorts of futuristic things. So I do think part of me says that. But I also, one of my favorite bands, who I own an acronym for the TLD, and I try to get them to pay attention to me. We'll see if they ever do, is Avenged Sevenfold. And Avenged Sevenfold is a very modern band. They're a metal band. They're on album number 7 or 8 at this point. But what they've done really well is they paid attention to bands like Metallica and Guns N' Roses, and more importantly, how much of a cult following those bands had. And so they have an entire line of NFTs you can buy on OpenSea, and they're pictures, right? Because NFTs are typically photos, and people buy them, and because they buy them, they can get tickets ahead of time, and they can get merchandise that you can't get. And even when you go to their website, it goes, "Do you want a Web 2 experience or do you want a Web 3 experience?" And I'm like, wow, this company, like this band is they're really trying to do the thing. But if you want to do any of that, just because you like music for a particular metal band, you have to learn how to do OpenSea, you have to learn how to do all these things, right? And they're constantly trying to bridge the gap to make it easier and easier and easier. And a domain name just seems like an obvious solution. So I do think that TLDs will be adopted more than they are today. I don't think they'll be as common for somebody like you and I to have one. Maybe a content creator, maybe a big content creator would have one. I don't think it'll be everybody's common thing. But I think SLDs have a huge potential to be, because people go, why would I have a bartender identity and a chess club identity? It's like, well, hold on a minute. You have an Instagram identity. You have a Facebook identity. You have a LinkedIn identity, an email identity. You have an Amazon store identity, an eBay identity, and you don't have, and I guarantee you don't have all those passwords written down in one place. Now, what if you could log into all of them simply with your actual identity, right, that represents you? And that seems pretty obvious to me. So I guess I land somewhere in the middle. It's like TLDs will empower brands that couldn't before have a much more personal relationship with their users, and users just want to get to their brands. And the answer somewhere in there.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I
So
agree. Yeah, I think that's kind of, I feel like we're saying the somewhat same thing.
yeah,
Like I like
yeah.
your thought of like the multiple SLDs would be just like multiple Instagram, your Instagram, your Facebook profile, et cetera, et cetera. I like that. Because isn't it really stupid when you think about it? You have to have a different identity just because of the social platform, not because of your like actual real identity or your real user. All right. Like, wouldn't it make more sense to have a different identity if for like your social, your like your chess club and your bartending, to separate them? That would make more sense to me than to have different identities because I'm on Instagram and Facebook, because that's just a technical
Yeah.
thing, right? That's nothing to do about the actual content.
We only have to because we have to, right? And
Yeah, it's just a
in my
technical
opinion,
limitation.
social media platforms are becoming less and less, they add less and less value to the user because they become so commercialized,
Exactly.
right? So
They're
listen,
a
I'm
threat, man. They're a threat. I've lost my Global from Asia Instagram for no reason, just because they said it's suspicious activity. You know,
I
it's a threat.
I love Twitter, and I use Twitter. You and I hang out on Twitter a lot. Apparently,
Yeah.
Meta wants to come out with a Twitter competitor. I would bet money it's going to fail. I would love, if it's better than great, but it won't be. A
Yeah.
centralized
It
social
might
media.
work, but it won't be the same. It won't be the same users as Twitter users. I think most Twitter users are crypto. Well, at least maybe they're not.
Yeah, R
But I
section.
think it's heavily, I think more Twitter people are just anti-Facebook almost. So I don't
Yeah,
think they're going to grab those users, but it might be able for them to have something that's not the current Twitter users are not going to go to the Meta Twitter. I don't think. Maybe we're both wrong, but yeah, I agree with you. It might not fail though. It might just work with the different user base.
I don't I don't think that whoever's in the boardroom designing it is thinking how can we make our users happier. I think they're thinking how can we
Yeah.
leverage user volume in a more effective way for business purposes, right? And that's a
Yeah,
shame.
exactly.
That's not what it was designed for. When it was designed, social media was to connect people, and I think that's okay. Go ahead and go down the path. It will lead to an inevitable demise and a rise of the dWeb. There we go. Me being optimistic. With that, okay. So I think we've covered TLDs, SLD adoption. Getting a little bit more granular. This I present both of them at the same time, and I don't speak as like where we should be putting our money today. I just speak, we've both been around Handshake long enough, seen all sorts of variations of it. Where do we think the token price is effectively as low as I've ever seen it?
Yeah.
And TLDs maybe I won't say are going for the highest prices I've ever seen, but they're getting as competitive as I've ever seen, right? Like it's like people realize that if you don't grab it, you may never see it again. And so with that said, what are your thoughts on both the Handshake token price, which is a proof of work blockchain, so it's issued to miners based as a reward program, and TLDs? Do you see where do you see them going based on your experience in the ecosystem and things like that?
Sure. Like kind of like almost like the previous conversation, SLD or TLD as a customer or user. It's really about the person that's listening to this and taking this advice. So what I would say is if you have no creativity and you won't be totally passive, then I think buy the coin, right? But if you have creativity and energy, even to flip the name, honestly, takes effort and takes effort, right? To sell a TLD, to flip a name, you need some exert of energy, and of course, you could passively wait for someone to find it in Namebase or whatever platform you try to sell. But I think to sell a TLD, of course, you could hopefully ask some Flamingo Handshake, but we don't accept anything, right? You have to get it. So I think to invest in a TLD, you need, of course, the best would be you actually want to use it like as an end user or like a reseller, right? Or staking it or using it. But if you're just trying to like make money off of it, I think you'll be better served if you're kind of like one of those hustler flipper guys. Like, some of them in a community, a lot of them are anonymous, some are not, but they're like actively on Twitter, they're actively in Discord selling it, right? But if you're like busy and you don't want to do that, then buy the coin. But of
Mhm.
course, the TLD has, I think, a higher upside than the coin. But of course, the coin is not an NFT, or it is a FT, a fungible, right? You can just buy and sell the coin, right? You can easily liquidate your position on, not so easily because it's not so liquid, but of course, it's much easier to enter and exit through a coin than a TLD. TLD is much less liquid, so you're gonna have to actively flip that or sell that or use that or market that. We've also noticed in the community, we've seen some people, I don't want to, even I've learned from Flamingo Handshake, people sell because they said it's not because they don't believe in the TLD, but they don't have the time to build that TLD. So
Yeah.
some people have given us some really great names, and they need our help because it's not as easy to sell it on Namebase or others, because it's just people have to find it, right? It's not like discoverable.
Yeah.
So they tell me, oh, they're great TLDs and maybe they could get more money later, or but they want to focus on a smaller group of TLDs. It's kind of hard to have a lot of TLDs and actively even sell them, or even definitely actively market them and build them. So I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but so I guess it depends on the person listening or taking this advice. So if you're going to build a community around it, even just one or two or three is a lot of work. You can't really build all of
Yeah.
them out. You can't buy like 100 of them, 50 of them, 5 of them, 3 of them, maybe 3, 2, 3. So the better way, I think, to invest would, maybe if you're going to actively work in Handshake, pick 1, 2, 3 and pay a premium, but work on those. If you're going to flip them, just tell yourself, are you going to put the time in to flip them, right? Because that's not just passive. And if you have no time and interest to do anything, buy the coin. And of course, don't invest more than you're willing to lose, and don't expect it to don't. I wouldn't say buy it if you need it in a year or two. I think you got to think a longer term and be able to stomach it dropping more. But of course, I don't know, man. We keep saying, is this I don't know. I feel like it's been the bottom for a while, but it might go lower. I hope it doesn't, but it might go lower. But of course, if this project experiment succeeds, the coin will have to go up, because people will need that coin even for renewals. Just, I know it might sound crazy, just renewals, but even just renewals, if it's successful and people are using this, it's going to go up,
That's why Mike is the pro, everybody watching. He covered so many things, and I think you're right on point there. If you are a passive investor, if you just think Handshake is a cool novelty concept and you think it has potential, just buy the token. Because as somebody who owns more TLDs than I should, I will tell you that you cannot manage them. You cannot manage them. You need to have a plan. You will be sorely disappointed if you think that you're just going to post them for sale and people are going to be like, "Oh my gosh, I better go buy this from you." That will not be the case. It may be, of course, one off. I've had the most random of TLDs get an offer where I'm like, "Oh, that's a lot of money. Sure, have it." Like, but it was never the
Yeah,
one I
I've
thought
gotten
it would
those.
be. And then you have a bunch where you're like, "This is amazing," and you covet it personally, and nobody else cares, right? And it's a very funny experience with it. And so flipping, I guess what I'm saying is flipping them is difficult. Staking a TLD it takes a lot of work. There's a couple guys in the community. John does a really good job. And he has, but even he has two TLDs. He owes, yeah,
Yeah.
shout out to him. He has dot sats and dgen, right? And he seems to have like a lot of fun with it, and he's very open about the experience, and he has fun. But .c, as far as I understand, and Noel owns .tx, and they really dedicate their heart and soul into one TLD, building one community. It takes a lot of energy for them, and they know that that's the route that they've taken. But there isn't this world where you just get to buy thousands of these things, and unless you make it your life, and even if you do, it's going to be a lot of dealing. You're a dealer, right? In that experience, and I think you touched on a really good point right there with the renewals. Renewals will not be as easy as they are today, and nor should they be, probably, right? Like Namebase, a lot of people have very varying opinions on Namebase. I will tell you this: we, as a Handshake user, I am grateful for Namebase for facilitating things. And I think in the future, most users will even be more grateful for what Namebase has done for the community. And when you realize you need to renew these hundreds or thousands of names that you bought, like you're gonna reconsider which ones you want to sell and what you want to
Yeah.
do with them. but I guess throwing my hat in the ring on my opinion on the matter, I think the token is the easiest thing to buy. It would be wise. I when I was earlier on, I said I'm going to pick up the TLDs. They're one of one. I've seen, I've lost one before, and I never was able to get it again. And I'm going to use that as a reference point to say if I see something I like and I can buy it, I might not even make an offer, even if it's a little more than I want to pay. I'm just going to buy it. I'm just going to buy it from you because if I make an offer and you decide to up the price, then now I'm out. Now I'm priced out. I can't afford it anymore. I'm just a little guy. So I tried to get the TLDs early on. Now with the token price being where it is, the token is more appealing to me, and it allows me to have exposure to the entire protocol rather than just some select TLDs. So, but I think the TLDs are what will make Handshake a prominent force, right? People, if it just takes a handful of people, Jahan is a big player in the whole crypto space, right? And Jahan's interest in Handshake has been a big deal. So you just need a few people to really want a few TLDs, and I think that drives the price. The price is an effect of the utility, the demand of the token, which increases the auctions, which increases all sorts of different things. And so the TLDs is where it starts, but the token is how you gain kind of a universal exposure to Handshake. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Believe it or not, Mike, we've been talking for an hour, and so
I was thinking about that. Yeah, crazy.
What are some other? Is there anything else that has been on your mind about Handshake in general? Maybe future of it, things that you would like to see, things that what are your thoughts?
So, of course, it's a huge question, and we're an hour already. I guess more succinctly, from my point is, of course, we're deep in a bear market. I feel signs of bull market coming back. My crystal ball, which of course is probably wrong, feels like we're kind of ending the very tail end of the bear. I think it's still a bear market, but I do feel like bull is switching about. Just general crypto or even investment market feeling. But of course, it's been a bear, and it's been really hard to be active. Even me, keeping active. But I feel like Handshake is stuck together better than other crypto communities. Of course, it's hard, but I mean, just general data about active users and discussions and building, I think, has been more than other kind of communities. So I feel like that's, and a lot of my friends, like Chris and I and others, just by surviving the bear, is a milestone. Of course, that sounds weak, but just surviving something means of course, you want to thrive. You don't want to just survive, but surviving this, as a community is a pretty big milestone in and of itself. Of course, the coin could be even lower, could go lower, but I think we should be proud of sticking together. Namebase has gone through a humongous transformation, right? The team, the buyout, the product. So I think we just reflect on that, and I can see the next bull Handshake will be a very clear, clear choice. There's of course ENS, Unstoppable still around. There's a bunch of other ones. I don't know which of those. Maybe some of those will survive. I don't think all of those are going to survive this bear. And when the new market comes, bull market comes, I can really see Handshake being even more of a trusted and useful go-to place for names. And I have a project I can't yet really share about, but it will be really, I hope, well received in the community, and it'll be like a defining thing for me personally, as well as my company. But we have to keep working to make it easier for the normal user, right? The normal user, not just about the deep crypto punk kind of cypherpunk person. The main user, unfortunately, I think I've learned over the last couple of years, doesn't care about decentralization. Most people still use Coinbase and like Binance, right? And they don't care about their keys and crypto, even though it's been said millions and millions of times over. So we just got to realize that. And of course, they can both coexist, the cypherpunks and the normal users. So we have to bridge the chasm. And that's why I think we both do appreciate name bases. They help bridge that chasm. And that's kind of my main kind of closing points. I don't know if that was helpful, but
No,
I'm bullish. And it's hard to be bullish when the price is down like so bad, and the community, everything. But I feel bullish.
yeah, no, I think those are good closing statements. I resonate with a lot of them. Handshake has an incredible amount of utility. That is what has made it, in my opinion, right? Miggs's version of things. That is what has carried it through the bear market, and that is exactly what has the community has grown. I have noticed it. We're a small group of people, but it has grown. The people interested has diversified across geography and across interests, and the people actually building has also increased, and it's done it in a bear market. And I think the next bull market will not be, sure, it may be mayhem, and money might start flying everywhere over meme points, but people are paying more attention. And not just within the world of domains, where I think that Handshake is setting itself apart very clearly, at least apart, maybe as the clear winner. People are arguing, right? But you know where I stand. But in terms of digital assets, people are not just looking for a pretty photo anymore. They understand that you can AI one in a moment. What they're looking for is utility tied to an asset, and I think that Handshake is doing that really well. It gives people something to think about and build on and expand upon. That is definitely much more. As somebody who I big fan of some NFT things, right? I own plenty of art because I think it's great, but I don't know what to do with it other than look at it occasionally, right? With Handshake, there is so much more I can do, and utility is there. So I think I agree with your sentiments. I think that we are near the end probably, and that people are going to they're gonna peruse, they're gonna check it out, they're gonna see what's going on, and they're gonna wanna see what they can do with the Handshake name. Um, all right, Mike, if you don't mind, I'm going to openly ask you that we do a recap in the future. I want to know what this whole announcement is all about. I know it's going to be very exciting. I know everyone's going to be looking forward
I
to it,
know
retweeting
it's
it and all
it's
that
like
stuff.
lawyers and stuff, and so I also have a little bit of bad rep. I don't have so much bad rep, but Johnny Woo, when he was in his burnout and others, I kind of got a rep of a big mouth with some of this brave stuff and other things. So I just got to keep it on the wraps. I was hoping to be able to share today, but basically it's e-commerce, bringing my e-commerce world into the, greater Handshake crypto blockchain world,
Good
essentially.
things
But
take
of
time,
course,
and
they
we will
take
wait
so much
for you,
time.
Mike. You've been around longer than almost all of us, and you've been very patient with us. We're happy to be patient with you.
All right.
It's going to be exciting. Look forward to the next. The next Flamingo Handshake, the next Handycon, our next chat. A lot going on, and we'll be staying in touch in the meantime. Thank you for joining for dWeb chat number 8. Later.
Thanks for having me, man. Lucky number 8 too. 8's a lucky number in
Yes, it
China.
is.